Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on in to Sports Talk with Broads. It's been a long time since I talked Sixers basketball. I believe the last time we spoke was against the Lakers, and I apologize for that. I had a lot going on personally, and I had a lot going on with work, and I kind of got tied up, but here we are, and there's a lot to go over. This team right now is in a good position, and I don't know if you would necessarily feel that or know that if you talk to the fan base. They won 11 of their last 14 games, and this is unfortunately coming off of a loss against the Chicago Bulls last night. No Joel Embiid. James Harden had a tough day at the office, while Levine did some dirty things from behind the arc and made some excellent shots, and it is what it is. You tip your cap. But I just feel like there's so much hostility with this team that they can't do anything during the regular season that would satisfy anybody until the postseason. Now, I understand that they need to get over the hump, but I think you have to separate the two unless you want to drive yourself crazy and just bang your head against a wall. When you look at the current standings and when you look at the Sixers being 23-15, knowing that James Harden missed a lot of time, knowing that Tyrese Maxey missed a lot of time, knowing that right now there's no Joel Embiid, and at times throughout the regular season, Daniel House was missing time, and you had DeAnthony Melton missing some time just sprinkled in throughout there. PJ Tucker hasn't really performed to the level that we would like him to perform. So there's a lot of variables here, and the team is still 23-15. At one point rolled off an 8-game win streak, okay? And it's like they won 8 straight games, and the day they lost to the Washington Wizards, after winning every home game during that 7-game span, they went on the road on Christmas Day, won an awesome game late in the fourth quarter to win against the Knicks. So now it's 8 straight, and it's like, oh, you lost to the Wizards. Doc's got to go. What? The Boston Celtics, who has the best record in the Eastern Conference, just allowed 150 points to the OKC Thunder without their best player in SGA. If you roll off 8 straight, you're due for a bad one. It just seems like whenever they do anything good, that's what they're supposed to do. And then whenever there's a hiccup, it's ridicule every single person within the organization. I'm not the biggest Doc Rivers fan in the world, okay? If you tell me that down the end of the road, they get to the second round, and I have to see how it plays out, right? Because context matters. But if they lose in the second round, and I think Doc Rivers does a poor job coaching and all that, I'm okay with moving on. I'm okay with seeing a new face. But to me, he's in the Brett Brown category where he can't do anything anymore. And even when he does pushes the right buttons, nobody gives him credit for what he does right. Everyone's disgusted because they won. They won against the Pacers, but they allowed a lead to slip before they found a way in overtime. I watched the Sixers have a phenomenal win during that big homestand against the Clippers, where they came back in the fourth quarter and won. My point is, the Sixers sometimes, believe it or not, you won't know this, but sometimes the Sixers in the fourth quarter come back against an opponent. Nobody gets credit for that, but when an opposing team makes a run against the Sixers suck. But the Sixers do it to other teams too. The Sixers are the team sometimes in the fourth quarter that makes special runs and they blow out a team with a massive 18-6 run with a couple minutes to go. That stuff happens too. It's almost like it's just the nature of the sport. And while sometimes it's frustrating, when you look at the first place team in the Western Conference, the Nuggets, they're 26-13. The Sixers are 23-15. The Sixers are in the same exact range as everybody else. The Celtics have a little bit of a lead in the Eastern Conference, but the Milwaukee Bucks are 25-14. My question becomes, what would satisfy people? What record? What record would satisfy anyone right now watching this team? Because them being where they are right now, it kind of makes sense on who they are. I don't think they're underperforming. They're not overperforming. I think at this point, their record describes who the 76ers are, which is in range with everybody else. I'm just a little lost and a little confused because when you get the pulse of the fan base, you would think that they have 7 wins. You would think that they have 10 wins. Believe it or not, on Thursday's show of the best show ever, it was about Doc Rivers because it was the day after that game against Indiana, which they won, by the way. D'Anthony Melton, some big shots made. Harrell, electric, with some big-time authority, with energy and freaking out and showing all sorts of emotion. James Harden on the defensive end late. Maxey making a big play. Yeah, you know what? The other team made a run. But the Sixers, when needed, hit the reset button and went out there and did their job to win in overtime. They won the game. And it was, Doc's got to be fired, this and that. We had a caller say that Joel Embiid is probably like Dwight Howard, where he won't win anything until he's a bench player on a team that has a LeBron James. That's what we get now. That's what we get now. And you know what? He's not an outlier. There's a lot of people that still despise Joel Embiid. They don't like the way he plays. He'll drop 40 consistently. Now, if he doesn't drop 40, it's looked at as a bad game. They just don't appreciate what you have in them. And there's more of them than you think. Now, it's not a majority, but there's more out there than you think. It's not just 1 or 2. And I feel that's problematic. I think you have to separate the frustration of losing in the second round and still find a way to admire what you're doing. James Harden is giving you 15 assists, 13 assists, 21 assists. He's finding ways to get this team established. Now, he had a stinker last night against Chicago, but he's had some really nice moments. And last year, you trade for him at the trade deadline, rightfully so. You trade that bum Ben Simmons. You get yourself a James Harden, but he's not healthy. So with 15, 20 games to go, you say, hey, James Harden, who's not healthy, go figure this thing out. It doesn't happen that way. Teams like Milwaukee have played together for a long period of time. Teams like the Boston Celtics going on the run they had last year. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, these guys have played together for a bit of time. You have a primary ball handler with his first full season with the team, playing with the big man with the skill set of Joel Embiid, trying to incorporate a Tyrese Maxey skill set. It's not the easiest thing in the world. And with them being 23 and 15 at this point, while guys are being in and out of the lineup, I don't know. I feel like the panic button's being reached, and I think it's the narrative is they're never going to win anything. So if you feel that way, don't watch. Don't watch. I think that's what upsets me the most, because there's so many Sixers fans disgusted and think it's going to end in failure anyway for some reason, whether they don't believe in Doc, whether they don't believe in Harden, whether they don't believe in Joel, no matter who it is, no matter maybe they think PJ Tucker is such a disaster that you'll never win with him, whatever it is. If that's how you feel, then don't watch, because you already know the outcome. I don't know what the outcome is. It very well may be they fall short again of an Eastern Conference final. At that point, yes, I will demand some change, even though I don't think that means Doc Rivers is one of the worst coaches in the history of the world, like some would say. Because the same people who wanted Brett Brown fired were the ones stoked, saying we finally got a real coach in Doc Rivers, and now here we are. Doc Rivers is a clown, and he's now in the territory of he can't do anything right, which is not the case. Too much blame and too much praise goes on the head coach, to be honest with you. Because when you look around this league, you had Udoka get canned from Boston because of things he was doing around town behind the scenes. They slide in some guy nobody even knows, and they're still first seed in the Eastern Conference. Maybe it's because of the talent on the team. Right? Now, I think there's a lot of talent on this team. If they come up short, I will blame them, but that doesn't mean they're a bum. You could have special talent. If Joel and they end up falling short in the second round, but the problem is last year he needed how many surgeries in the offseason on both hands and on his orbital bone? That plays a role in maybe why coming up short. Imagine playing basketball where you need surgery on both of your hands. as a player that can play down low and does play down low more than he actually gets credit for. I find it all crazy. That's all. I find it all crazy. Steven says, why is it wrong to blame business decisions of the team and be a fan? Can you clarify a little bit more on what that means? What business decision am I missing out on? He was forced to. I'm sorry. Maybe I jumped into the chat room on a mid-conversation, so I apologize for that. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Harden's constantly doing something. This is the problem, too, with the whole Doc Rivers thing. If you're going to admit that P.J. Tucker has been a failure to this point, which, let's be honest, he has been. And I thought that you'd be able to use him as a small ball 5. It seems like he's really struggling as the small ball 5, and that plays a role in what he's able to do as a head coach. Now, you still have Harrell, you still have Paul Reed, and I think they can hold the fort down for certain situations and whatnot, but it's all matchup-based, and maybe down the road, a P.J. Tucker who can actually play the 5 would be a big-time difference compared to the others, but right now he seems to be banged up. He doesn't seem to have the confidence offensively. They're trying some things on the offensive side where, he's up by the perimeter, but clearly his shot distribution shows that he's not going to do anything from there, so he's not that much of a threat. You got to find a way to get him back into the corners, but, there's such a snowball effect when that happens. Matisse Thybulle's limited. P.J. Tucker's not playing as well as he is. Tyrese Maxey's coming back from an injury. It's not the easiest thing to coach around. And also, this is the time to kind of figure out what you can and cannot do. Here's my 2 biggest criticisms of Doc Rivers to this point that I think are extremely fair. One, you should never have, when both guys are playing, Joel Embiid and James Harden off the floor at the same time. I never want to see an all-bench lineup. I never want to see a spot where both of those guys are not on the floor. One of the two need to be there. And then number 2 is the minutes of James Harden right now. I hope by the end of the 82 games, he's not beaten down and his legs aren't shot. Like, he's logging in a ton of minutes. But how much of that is you didn't have Tyrese Maxey? How much of that is you don't really have a true point guard outside of Harden? And really, Maxey isn't a true point guard. You have guys who can maybe hold their own for a limited amount of time. A Shake Milton. I mean, I love what DeAnthony Melton is as a player, but he's not necessarily a full-time ball-in-the-hands kind of guy. So now that you have another option, you keep Joel on the floor. Maxey can be the one while James Harden's off the bench. Those are my 2 real legitimate criticisms. That's where I'm at there. But I'm looking for Steve's comment here. I feel like the Harden trade was not the best trade. It was, though. To utilize Joel, he was, though. James Harden was the best thing you can do with the Ben Simmons deal. I truly believe that. And I know the reports on the Christmas day, maybe James Harden doesn't want to be here in Houston and this and that. I ain't worried about that. I'll worry about that down the road. I got too much to focus on. I'm worried about what this team is doing. I'm worried about what the squad is doing at this particular moment. I ain't worried about James Harden in the offseason. Look, it's in the back of my head. And I think back to the whole point of what I just mentioned of I don't think James Harden was the best move that's being discussed right now as we do the show. This is an NBA 2K, right? Like, this isn't NBA 2K where you go to the trade offers and you smash the Y button and you try and get any player you can from all these teams and this and that. You got James Harden. People act like Tyrese Halliburton was an automatic yes and this and that. And you're acting like you know what you would be with this team with Tyrese Halliburton? 23-15. If not worse. You're acting like this team would be what? 30 and 8, whatever the difference would be with Tyrese Halliburton. We're talking Tyrese Halliburton as if it's Kevin Durant. And guess what? If Tyrese Halliburton was here, you'd watch him every day, you'd see his flaws, and you'd go, yeah, but we could have had James Harden. You'd watch James Harden average something along the lines of 22, 10, and 7 playing on a different team. And you go, what, we could have 22, 10, and 7 over Tyrese Halliburton? You would just complain on who the other person was. Sixers fandom is strange to me. And I think it's the most bizarre. And unfortunately, the most toxic. And that's saying a lot. Right now, there's a lot of distraction with what the Eagles are doing and Nick Sirianni and the fact that they're constantly, winning, even though the last couple of weeks they didn't with their backup. But, we know what they did throughout the regular season. When the Eagles run is over and it's full-time Sixers ball, games 50 through 82, it's going to be a nightmare. I think the night-to-night watch. For example, last night, James Harden just missed his shots. That was a problem. That was problematic. The positive was Tyrese Maxey. He looked to be a lot better coming off of the injury, and, the flow of the game looked like it came natural to him, which is a huge positive for the long-term sign of him returning. In reality, though, some nights, everyone's always looking for Doc did this, and Doc didn't play Matisse, and you know why? Because Matisse Thybulle, the individual player, still hasn't progressed. Maybe that's an issue. Matisse Thybulle is handcuffing the team because he can't learn how to play the game. That's a problem. And as a coach, you can only do so much. Wait until Ben Simmons gets to the playoffs. Wait until you have to coach around those flaws. Wait until you have to coach around the free throw line. It's impossible. The only way you can is if the special Kevin Durant almost wills the team to victory like he did against the Milwaukee Bucks a couple postseasons ago. But that's a tall order to do. I think they're a bit fraudulent. It's just crazy to me. Because you look at the standings, right? And people will be like, yeah, but that Cleveland team, look at the way that Cleveland team's playing. Yeah, you go to the Cleveland. 25-15. 25-15. They're one game above the Sixers. But you talk about the Sixers as if they're 9 games back. It's just mind-blowing. I know all they can do at this point to shut everybody up is to get farther. And we'll see how it all plays out. But there's a lot of variables, and context matters. Sometimes, it goes back to the blame thing, right? Real quick, I'll close on this thought as we have some Anytime Hotline text messages and questions rolling through the show. But sometimes it's about, the players just played bad, or the players didn't have their night. C.J. McCollum goes off in New Orleans. Sixers lose. The next time they see each other was at the Wells Fargo Center. C.J. McCollum didn't have the same type of night. Zion ended up getting a bit banged up, but the Sixers played better. They won the game. Harden didn't play so well yesterday. They lost the game, but they went on an 8-game win streak prior to all this going down to put themselves in a nice position. There's always need to be the finger pointing on. Sometimes you just didn't make your shots. Sometimes you just didn't play well. It's not X and O. It's not strategy. It's not Doc. It's not rotations. The guys just played poorly. But it never seems like it could be that. It always falls on one man, whether that's fair or not. There's going to be plenty of times where I think it's very fair to objectively sit in this chair and to say, Doc, you failed them. Doc, you did a bad job. Doc, it's impossible to lose that game. Doc, you have to be better. Absolutely. It's not as if he can never have the crosshairs and the target when it comes to criticism. Absolutely. Absolutely. It just goes 100 times too insane. Too insane. And I was madder than the last time we spoke against the Lakers. I was not happy. And I'm still not a big fan. I'm not a big fan. I'm just not irrational with it. Every single head coach in this league that comes here is the problem always. Eric Spoelstra, fantastic coach. We can all agree. Fantastic coach. Nick Nurse, fantastic coach. Well, Eric Spoelstra is 21-19. And Nick Nurse is 16-23. Greg Popovich is 13-26. All right? I'm just saying. It's just crazy. All right. Anyway. Anyway, we got some text messages here. This is from Chris K. in Washington Township. Hey, bro, it's two things. With Montrez's two really solid games, do you think Doc will be inclined to give him more minutes? We know Doc leans towards the veterans over the young players for sure, but he also says Paul Reed always sparks energy somehow. Does he deserve more minutes too? I think it's a night-to-night basis kind of thing. You know, they're both going to have their ups and downs, matchup based, this and that. Just based off the track record, he's probably going to give Harold a nod more. Harold does have some issues defensively, although the other day he had the two-handed block laid. He had a couple of blocks in that game, which was the positive sides. But for all those good games, there's going to be some ugly ones. I think it's just a day-by-day feel and watch type of thing. If one guy doesn't have it in the first half, maybe you go to a different guy. It's sort of a rotating door based off of just how the way it should be. So does he deserve more minutes for a couple of good games? Sure, but there's probably going to be a time where he's going to look ugly and then Paul Reed can go in. To me, it's just a feel. Both guys are going to play, but if you realize one guy doesn't have it, don't force feed it. And, you have options. You can kind of find a way to utilize both and utilize their strengths to what they do to help out this team. I think Paul Reed does some things well. I think Harold, when he does play his best ball, clearly can help out and put back some garbage up at the glass and, all sorts of things. So he has deficiencies, though, no doubt about it. Defensively, it can get ugly, but it's not as if Paul Reed doesn't make mistakes. Paul Reed has his own version. It's funny. Everyone's like, you got to play Paul more. You got to play Paul more. And at times, absolutely. But then Paul has one of the most hideous performances ever. And if that was Harold, Doc would have got obliterated. It's a feel thing. Both guys deserve to play, and I think that there's a way to utilize both of them, especially in the regular season. When the postseason comes into play, it's a whole different beast when it comes to matchups. But for right now, night-to-night kind of thing. That's how I see it. All right, this is from Mac. How would you grade Doc so far? A lot of questionable decisions and big runs from other teams. I'm just waiting for the second-round exit. Well, if you're just waiting for the second-round exit, Mac, then don't watch the game. That's my answer to you. How would I grade Doc so far? I think he's doing his job. He's not doing it to an elite level. He's not doing it to a bad level. I think he's doing his job at the right level right now. I can only grade right now. I can't project and go all the way forward, or not really project, but I can't back to the future. Well, that doesn't make sense because I'd be going backwards. I can't teleport. I can't teleport to May. All I can do is react to right now. Based off the injuries, based off everything, being 23-15, I think Doc is at, I'd say, a B. Doc has been a B. He's only got to really get judged based off of the end result, which is fine. I'm willing to move on from Doc Rivers at some point. But right now is not the time to rip his head off. When there is the time to do it, hey, I'll be here. Trust me. I'll never escape a time, and I'll never vanish when it's time to freak out about somebody not doing a good job. You don't think I would? Not that I want this to happen. I prefer Doc Rivers to succeed, but I think that's part of the issue with this fan base. They don't react to what's going on they already have it in their head. I'm going to hate him no matter what. I'm going to despise him no matter what. So it doesn't matter what he does. I'm just saying, if there is a time to freak out about somebody, trust me, I'm a loudmouth. I'll let it rip. I don't prefer it because I prefer the people to do a good job. I hate Chuck Fletcher. I want Chuck Fletcher to be good. People despise Howie. They don't ever want to give Howie Roseman credit. It's already in their brain. I prefer Howie Roseman being good compared to being bad. People don't want that with Doc. They'd rather be right with their opinion and have him fired than him be the right answer. That's not how I am. But I'm just saying, if there is an opportunity to freak out because someone's not doing their job, I'll react to it. Lenny, is Joel Embiid ever going to get the respect he deserves? I heard you on the radio bring up the betting favorite for MVP. Yeah, I don't think he will. I don't think he will. Yeah, see, the chat is saying, give him a D+, he needs to go. Hashtag fire Glenn Rivers. Okay. Well, I don't know how you'll ever be satisfied. Because you're saying the same thing about Brett, and then we're stoked when Doc Rivers got fired or hired here. Yeah, I want to go to the favorites here, the betting favorites, because the last I looked, it was Luka, it was Kevin Durant, it was Jason Tatum. he was about 5th or 6th on the list for MVP. I don't know what more he can do. He averaged 30 points per game last year. He's averaging 33 this year. He's dominating the game every night. Not that other guys aren't, but MVP winner. Luka Doncic is the favorite at plus 275. Giannis plus 350. Jokic plus 350. Tatum plus 375. Durant plus 800. And Joel Embiid is now plus 2,000 to win MVP. He'll never win it. It is what it is. He'll never win MVP. And it's disgusting, but that's just where we're at. I don't know what else we can do about it. I don't know what else we can do about it. So this is Steven. This is the same coach that would play DeAndre Jordan. Oh, yeah, no doubt. He made bad decisions in the past. He's made bad. Every coach you can look at playing. There's not a soul who coached in the NBA that didn't make poor decisions at some point. You didn't lose the playoffs because Doc Rivers lost the playoffs. You lost the playoffs because your players didn't perform. That's why you lost in the postseason. TJ, my biggest problem with Doc comes down to his rotations. Why is it we go all bench? Why is it Harrell plays over Reed? He is consistent, all right, consistently ruining every team he goes to. All right. All right. Whew. See, I'm already aggravated watching everyone talk about it. See, Doc Rivers, now this person's freaking out that PJ Tucker's... Yeah, PJ Tucker playing the small ball 5 has been a thing, and he can do it. And that was probably a vision while constructing the team. There's nothing wrong with thinking PJ Tucker can play small ball 5. It's actually embarrassing in my eyes to laugh at thinking that that could be an option. That has definitely been an option. Now, he's struggling to play right now because this version of the player, but to think that's not an option... I question your knowledge at that point. I do. There is a thing as small ball basketball, small ball 5. And in theory, PJ Tucker can provide that for you. Now, he's not excelling at the moment. But if this isn't the time to try it, this is. There were times in the past where Doc would get ripped for not trying new things. If he tries new things and they don't work, which is kind of how experimenting goes, now he's getting annihilated for it. The reaction is so heavy. Once again, we're going to end on this note. I'm not a big Doc Rivers guy. I don't love Doc Rivers. And hell, if I had to bet, I'd probably say he won't be here next year, which means they probably don't do as well as we want. I don't know. I'm just saying if I had to bet. I'm saying if I had to put down money, because you have to prove me something, right? That's kind of how I go. You have to prove me something, all right? So I'm just, but right now, based off of what he has done this year with this team, the reaction that he's what more can they be than be where everybody else is? They're where everyone else is. So that means every other coach needs to be fired? That means every other team is underachieving. They're not underachieving. They're where they're supposed to be. What more can you demand than in range of every other team in the Eastern Conference that has a chance to compete? They're right there with the Milwaukee Bucks. They're right there with the Cleveland Cavs. The Nets went off an insane run. But the odds say they'll flirt back to normalcy after that a massive run. They're in range with everyone else. There's not much more that they could be unless you demand them to be undefeated. Or you demand them to have the Golden State Warriors season, where they broke records of the Chicago Bulls. The first place team in the Western Conference is 26-13. The best team in the East, 26-13. The Sixers are 23-15. We're talking about them as if they stink and they're not doing anything. It's unbelievable. Sixers fans are they're delusional. I believe they're delusional. And that's where I'm going to end things. I don't know what this team is. I'm not telling you they're going all the way. I'm saying the reaction to this point, and that's all I can react to, has been asinine. And that's my closing thought. Thank you. Talk to you guys later.